Despite claiming that they are seeking peace, Russia continues to attack Ukrainian cities, targeting civilian infrastructure. Overnight, Moscow launched 86 attack and decoy drones as well as an Iskander and ballistic missile against Ukrainian regions. At least 15 explosions were heard in the city of Kharkiv, reported the head of the regional military administration. 12 civilians were injured, 2 children among them. Russian forces launched a massive drone attack damaging residential buildings, cars and outbuildings.
There were a lot of residential buildings damaged. A boiler station was completely demolished. It was the main one for this small district, and all the residents are now left without heating.
According to the State Emergency Service, 8 UAV hits were identified, causing fires to break out in 4 locations. The largest covered an area of 2,500 square meters at a production site.
We sheltered at home and heard the hit, jumped into the corridor and just stayed on our knees. It was very loud, but our windows, thank God, were intact, because we had opened them. But the explosion blew the door over us. We heard the glass shattering.
The city of Dnipro also suffered drone attacks. Russian UAVs targeted a densely populated area, injuring 3 people, a man and 2 women.
We came here and saw this. A Shahed hit right here. Just have a look. Police officers found the engine of the drone yesterday. I feel so sorry for the residents. I ran here yesterday and I didn't think about the cars. There were people living here, children. Cars are not that important. Thank God everyone's alive and well. Nothing else matters.
The regional governor reported that more than 10 high-rise buildings, businesses and an educational institution were damaged during the attack. The Russian drone strike also damaged over 60 cars, completely destroying several of them. Damages were also reported in the Sumy and Chernihiv regions. According to the Ukrainian Air Force, defenders shot down 46 Russian attack drones overnight, with 26 decoy UAVs lost in the area without destructive consequences. A Ukrainian F-16 pilot sheds light on his sorties in an exclusive interview published by the Air Force Command on Wednesday. The pilot, whose identity remains undisclosed for security reasons, went into great detail about how mastering Western jets allows him to save lives across the front line.
We gather precise intelligence on our targets well in advance. Despite some claims in the media suggesting otherwise, our reconnaissance teams are adapting quickly and providing timely, actionable data. As I've already mentioned, we keep watch 24/7 on combat duty in the designated airfield. This network is so profound, there's no area we couldn't cover.
The F-16 pilot discussed how he can cover both troops on the ground and his comrades in the skies, who are flying various aircraft including MiG-29s or Su-25s. He emphasized the high efficiency of operations, highlighting the precision of Western technology in combat scenarios.
Nearly every missile we launch hits its target. More than 80% of our missiles reach their intended destination, neutralizing threats such as Shahed drones and cruise missiles launched from the sea, air and land.
Currently, Ukrainian F-16s are focused on striking tactical depth targets, but their impact is significant.
You could say our accuracy is akin to a surgeon's scalpel. Should we wish, our bombs could easily fly in through someone's windowsill.
Additional reinforcements of North Korean troops have been sent to fight in Russia's war in Ukraine, reported Yonhap media, citing South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff. The deployment of 3,000 North Korean personnel to Russia in January and February brings the estimated total to 11,000, with 4,000 already killed or wounded, according to Seoul's military assessment. In exchange, the JCS suggests that Moscow could be providing Pyongyang with advanced weapons technology. North Korea is also supplying Russia with a significant amount of weaponry, including short-range Kn-23 ballistic missiles, 170mm self-propelled cocks and howitzers, and around 220 units of 240mm multiple rocket launchers. Depending on battlefield developments, these weapons shipments to Russia could increase, warns the JCS. France will provide Ukraine with a new €2 billion military aid package. This was announced by the country's President Emmanuel Macron during a joint press conference with his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Macron confirmed that the package would include air-to-ground missiles for Mirage fighter jets, ammunition, anti-tank missile system, armored vehicles, and investments in Ukraine's defense industry.
La France, depuis le début, vous le savez, apporte des capacités.
From the beginning, France has provided capabilities that answer to the priority needs of the Ukrainian army forces, and we have prepared additional assistance with Milan anti-tank missiles, air defense means such as Mika missiles that are equipped in the Mirage jets that were delivered, and Mistral surface-to-air defense missiles. To resist on the front, the Ukrainian army will also receive armored vehicles, tanks, as well as various ammunition, some teleoperated or drones, and we also advanced on the cooperation in terms of satellites and intelligence.
Macron also stressed that Moscow should not have the right to review support that a country provides and will provide to Ukraine, nor can it dictate the conditions for sustainable peace. Speaking at the press conference, Zelenskyy underlined his hopes that the United States has enough power to press the Kremlin leader into an unconditional peace.
Sanctions against Russia should remain in place and strengthened as long as the Russian occupation continues.
NATO does not foresee a normalization of relations with Russia even after the war in Ukraine concludes, stated the Alliance Secretary-General Mark Rutte. Speaking at the Warsaw School of Economics, he stressed that there is a total lack of confidence in Moscow.
Well, there will be no normalization of relations with Russia when the war is over. That will not happen. That will take decades because there is a total lack of confidence. The threat is still there. As I said in my speech, even if the war comes to a conclusion, the Russian threat is still there.
During his visit to Poland, Rutte also addressed the potential risk of a Russian attack on NATO territory, stating that any such action would trigger a devastating response from the alliance. He also underlined that when one has to deal with the Kremlin leader Putin, one cannot trust him. Overnight Russian drone attacks against Ukraine shows that the Kremlin is not willing to negotiate an end to the war. On his X page, the Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha stated that Russia launched swarms of drones into densely populated areas in Ukraine's major cities, stressing that there were no military objectives, only terror for civilians. Sybiha noted that this demonstrates Putin wants to prolong the war rather than reciprocating the efforts of Ukraine, the US and its partners to end it. A Ukrainian long-range drone strikes that rained down on Russia's Engels strategic airbase in the Saratov region on March 20 destroyed 96 cruise missiles. This was reported by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine on Wednesday. The attack triggered secondary explosions that lasted for several hours, further devastating the site. According to the General Staff, the missiles that were wiped out in the aftermath were expected to be used in at least 3 Russian strikes against Ukraine in March and April. Moreover, the strike on Engels air base led to a mass burnout of aviation fuel, which will disrupt Russian offensive operations, concluded the Ukrainian General Staff. The summit in the French capital gathered high-ranking officials from 31 countries, as well as the President of the European Council, President of the European Commission, and the NATO Secretary-General. The Ukrainian president posted a photo of the participants on Telegram, adding that Europe knows how to defend itself and they have to prove this.
The first message is clear. It's that we will continue to support the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian army in the short term. This is a necessity to be in the best possible condition to prepare for peace. We also decided unanimously that this is not the time to lift whatever sanction, and it will not be a lifting of sanctions before peace is clearly established. And so we plan to continue the economic pressure, especially on the shadow fleet and on some industrial capacities. We'll remain mobilized on these points.
More support for Ukraine to make sure Ukraine is in the strongest possible position, both now and in further negotiations. Second, complete clarity that now is not the time for lifting of sanctions. Quite the contrary, what we discussed is how we can increase sanctions to support the US initiative to bring Russia to the table through further pressure from this group of countries.
No lifting of any kind of sanctions until Russia will stop this war. And I think more pressure on it, more packages of sanctions. This is important. The second point, as you said, Kir, that new packages to strengthen Ukraine, and we heard of some of the leaders' new packages where we're thankful to all the leaders.
In the 7.5 months since the start of the Kursk operation, the total losses that Ukrainian soldiers inflicted on Moscow's troops amounts to more than 55,000. Of these, more than 22,200 were killed in action and over 940 Russian soldiers were taken prisoner. These numbers were shared by the Ukrainian Commander-In-Chief Alexander Syrsky. He visited the Sumy region to oversee the Ukrainian defenders repelling a number of Russian operations aimed at gaining ground in the area. While there, Syrsky also emphasized that Ukrainian servicemen are actively carrying out counterattacks and assaults in the Kursk group of forces operational zone to disrupt Russian advances. Statements coming from U.S. Special Envoy for the Middle East Steve Witkoff very often repeat Kremlin narratives, believes President Zelenskyy. In an interview with France Television, he noted that the Ukrainian side tries to share real and truthful information. Kyiv is fighting Putin and does not want him to have additional assistance, added the Ukrainian president.
I think that Witkoff really very often cites the Kremlin narrative, and I think that this does not get us close to peace. I think this sadly will weaken the pressure of the US on the Russian Federation. We can only correct this information field with our actions. We're trying to do that. I have spoken with President Trump more than once, and at the intelligence level we have exchanged real information, truthful information. We are already fighting against a country that is 40 times bigger than ours by territory. It's smaller by dignity, but that's their problem. It's difficult for us, and I have always said to President Trump that we want the US to be on our side. And even if now the US has chosen to be in the middle, then they need to stay in the middle and not come closer to the Kremlin.
Russian troops launched a massive strike on Kherson's city center. Footage of the attack was shared by the head of the regional military administration. He stated that a 55-year-old woman was killed in the attack and one civilian was injured and hospitalized.